Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you again tonight to another edition of our daily digital Devo, and it's good to be with you this evening. I confess I'm a little bit tired tonight. It's been a long week. A week ago today, my brother Doug was involved in a motorcycle accident that they're still investigating, and he went into the hospital a week ago. And a week ago tomorrow is when I traveled from here to Pueblo, Colorado, to be with him in the hospital. And thank you all for your prayers and support. I had mentioned this a week ago on our daily digital Devo. Um, I don't think I even had time to put that out on YouTube and that sort of thing. Sorry about that. More on that here in a little bit. I'll talk a little more about that. But good to see you, Jonna and Randy and Jackie and Jason and Cheryl. I see you're on here, so I can digitally wave at you or virtually wave at you. And I've been talking about how it's just been a long week. Excuse me, I have an itch on my nose. I'm not supposed to touch my face, I guess. I need to go wash my hands. But when you got an itch, you got an itch. So thank you to those who filled in for me while I was gone last week. I know Deanne did a lot of work while I was while I was gone, and Frecia along with her, in order to get things ready, because we had our first in-person worship service in 7 weeks, and that was Sunday morning at 8 a.m. And we're going to continue to have 8 a.m. worship service for a while here until otherwise noted. So you're invited to come and join us. I thought it would be a frustrating experience to be able to be here but not interact, but we were able to interact more than I thought we would. And it really was encouraging to have the sound of people that are having fun and enjoying one another's company in our sanctuary. And that was really great. So glad that some of you were able to join us for that. Again, we'll be having 8 a.m. Worship for a while. We're supposed to encourage the use of masks. I did not use one on Sunday, but then there were people here who did, and then I felt like I probably should wear a mask at least before and after our worship time. So I'm going to do that, but not during worship, because I'll probably be singing and I'll definitely be talking. Thanks to Fred Stevens for filling in on the weekend, as I didn't have the opportunity to prep a sermon, and he had some in a file because he preached over in Claremont, Missouri for several years, and so he'd experienced a number of Mother's Days. And so thank you, Fred, for filling the pulpit there and taking the pressure off of me, and to Lori Van Winkle for planning the worship time as well. So good to see you. Good to see you, Chad. Looked like you had a good Mother's Day, you and yours. And Nicolette, good to see you as well. Thanks again for all those who stepped in while I was ministering to my family. I confess that I haven't read each chapter of Proverbs. I know that I missed yesterday, and I think I missed Saturday. But the point isn't just to read the Bible. It's not just to do the activity of, oh, I checked that off. I read that chapter of Proverbs, but it's to benefit from Proverbs and to soak in some of the wisdom that we have there, and to really benefit from it. And chapter 10 starts this whole long list of like verse-long proverbs that just go one after the other after the other. And there's a whole lot of information here in these proverbs. It shouldn't be difficult to pick one out and to say, hey, that's my favorite proverb in this particular chapter. So all of those start, there's a chapter heading, or there's a heading at the beginning of chapter 10. It's the Proverbs of Solomon. So I hope you benefited from chapter 10. There's just a lot of good things in there. But today is the 11th, and so we're going to be digging into chapter 11. And so you can follow along if you want to open your Bible to the book of Proverbs, chapter 11. It's about halfway through our Bibles. It's right after Psalms and then Proverbs chapter 11. I could go with verse 1. The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. And so here's what would happen. They'd have scales, one, and a balance, and there's two sides, and the one side you put a stone that has a certain weight marked on it, and the other side you put silver. But some people would cheat on the weight of their stones, and so it would cheat people out of their silver. And so you want to make sure that you have honest scales. And here's where we can apply some of this a little bit. Not ripping people off, not being dishonest about things. Rebecca and I and Levi, Aaron, and Isaac, we went up to York, Nebraska today to pick up a new vehicle. We traded in our Suburban. Still kind of kicking myself about that. I think the Suburban would go and go and go, but we got a vehicle that'll will go and go and go with a Toyota Highlander. And so it's 7 years newer than our Suburban. And we go to York because Rebecca's cousin Chad owns a car lot there. And so we trust Chad. We have a relationship with him. We know him. We know he's not going to be dishonest. He's not going to sell us a vehicle that he knows has problems. And so there's a lot of safety that comes with that. If you go and buy from someone privately, I don't know enough about vehicles to know, oh, this is going or that is going. I mean, I know some basic things just like everybody else does, but it's nice to be able to trust somebody. When you go to a car lot, somebody might just be slapping a thin veneer over things just to get by. And I experienced that several years ago when I bought a car and I didn't go to Chad. And so this time we went back to Chad at Velocity Auto Sales in York, Nebraska, and he uses honest scales. And so that means a lot. Or I could go to verse 13. Maybe you enjoyed that verse. It says, a gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. So are you a gossip or are you trustworthy? That's a little gossip test. Do you talk about people behind their backs when someone trusts you with a confidence? Do you share that? Do you blab that all over, or are you a gossip? So that that maybe that's a good one for you. Verse 14 is a great one for leaders. It says, for lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. And that's a great one for leaders, for governors, and for presidents even. Many advisors lead to victory. You don't want to have tunnel vision. You need to make sure you look at the big picture and you bring in several different options, several different opinions, even if you don't like the opinion that someone has to give you. You want to have many advisors. When I'm getting ready to make a big decision, I want to involve some other people in that decision. First of all, I want to involve my wife. Well, first of all, I want to involve God and say, God, what do you want in this situation? And I also then involve my wife to make sure that we're of one mind. And she has sound discernment. And that's one of her spiritual gifts, is a gift of discernment. And so I go to her with things. I involve some friends maybe. I'm glad that I'm friends with some of our elders who have some wisdom about certain things, people that I can trust. So I want to have many advisors, and that will lead to victory. Or then again, there's what verse is it in chapter 11? Oh, it's one that I mentioned before, and Rebecca's gonna shoot me if I mention this again. But verse 22, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. And I mentioned that one's so nice that God put it in there twice, and so that'll come up in another chapter. But what does that mean? Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. That means that she looks pretty at first, but she's really not. It's disgusting, right? A gold ring and a pig's snout, and they're rooting around and things. It's really gross. And so I would say, in the positive sense here, girls, guard your hearts. and realize your value in God's eyes, because you're precious. You're much more precious than a gold ring in a pig's snout. And so treat yourself the way that God would want you to be treated, as a masterpiece and as his handiwork and as someone who is beautiful and precious in his sight. But then we come down to some verses that I really want to address. Verse 24, Proverbs 11:24. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but he comes to poverty. So one person gives freely, yet gains even more. That doesn't make sense, right? In the worldly sense of things, that doesn't make sense. That again, this is Proverbs 11:24. But one person gives freely, yet they gain even more. How would that work? To let go of something in order to receive. And another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. So some people give away freely, and then they are given things by God, and other people hold on so tightly to things and can't let it go. And there's a principle of sowing and reaping here. Now, as a Christian, I don't believe in the Hindu concept of karma. Karma says what goes around comes around, basically, but the biblical definition would be sowing and reaping. What a person sows, that is what they are going to reap. And here's the thing, God can't bless you if you have a closed fist. If you're trying to hold on to everything that you have been given, and you've been given it, it comes from God. Every good and perfect gift comes from God, comes from above, from the Father of the heavenly lights, who doesn't change like shifting shadows. That's what James, the brother of Jesus, says. And so every good and perfect gift comes from here. But how can he give a gift if your hands are clenched tight around what he's already given? And so what do we have to do is we let go. We let go of those things. And then God can give us even more. It's a principle that Rebecca and I have seen many, many times, to let go, and then God can give you more. Now, this isn't a health and wealth gospel thing. This isn't saying that God is going to make you rich if you give away all of your money, although he called a certain rich young ruler to give away everything that he had. But that doesn't mean we're not talking health and wealth. We're just talking the law of sowing and reaping. It's not karma. It's a biblical law of sowing and reaping. There are times that we have tried to stretch money or tried to hold tightly to money, especially after, say, we get a tax refund or something. We're going to hold on to this money, and it seems to just fall through our fingers like water. It just drips out. It's like we got a hole in our boat or something like that. But when we honor God with that, and so several years ago we'd take our tax refund and we take 10% of that. That's a biblical thing, and we set that aside and say we're going to give this for this particular reason, or whatever that happens to be, whatever God is laying on our heart to give. Not that we have to do that or force others to, but I know it's good for us to let go of what God has given us. We have a need to give. And Brian Davidson mentioned this on Sunday morning. It's a part of why we do, we go ahead and we have the offering time during our worship services. Now, some churches have opted not to do that. Say, oh, we don't want to have our hand out for people. Well, we don't either. We want to be able to give to others, but we believe, and we believe Scripture teaches, and I think rightly so, that giving is an act of worship. And so it's an act of worship to God to let go of what he's already given us so that he can give us more. And that leads us to 11:25. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. A generous person will prosper. John Jones, if you hadn't heard, passed away. John and Ruth were in our church for many years. John was an elder when I came here. Actually, I came to Wymore. We moved to Wymore just over 16 years ago this week. I preached on Mother's Day in 2004. That was our first Sunday here. I believe that it happened to be May 9th was the day, and that we moved on May 7th, which was a Friday, and I preached on that Sunday. And John Jones was part of the team that came, and They interviewed me. I had an interview in Kansas City. They drove through a snowstorm to hear me preach there in Kansas City, and they ended up calling me to this church. And I believe that God arranged that, and I appreciate that. But John Jones is one that always just had a sense of radical generosity to help others. Was very, very open and from his heart, and he ministered to other people. And so we have the opportunity now. He's gone home to be with the Lord. We have the opportunity to be involved with his graveside service, which is going to be on Thursday. That's this Thursday. And on Thursday from 11 a.m. until noon, we'll be doing a drive-through visitation for John Jones's family. So his wife Ruth will be here, and his children will be here. Not all of his grandchildren are able to be here. One, I know Travis lives overseas. He lives in England, I think in the city of London, and so he's not going to be able to make it. But there'll be about a dozen people here, and we want to drive through the west entrance and through our concrete parking lot by our building, and then out the east entrance. And so that's again from 11 a.m. until noon on Thursday, a drive-through visitation for John Jones. And I think about this, about refreshing others. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Families that I've loved and I've served and I've prayed for. Families that I've loved and served and prayed for are now refreshing me. And some families in our community, they've experienced tremendous loss, and they're now encouraging me in my loss. And it's very, very humbling. But that's the law of sowing and reaping, right? We reap what we sow. We sow seeds of kindness and generosity, and they will produce a harvest. That's just the principle. It's not 100%. It's not all of the time. Sometimes you do and serve for other people, and it doesn't come back. But most of the time it does. That's the law of sowing and reaping. So it's not that we're trying to wrench a blessing from somebody by refreshing others, knowing that I will be refreshed later. But the principle is this: when we do refresh others, then others will refresh us when we need it. That is certainly proving itself true for me and my family as we endure the loss of my brother Doug. So thank you for your continued prayers. There are difficult days and hard days. I think my brain is still a little bit fuzzy, trying to just deal with and trying to process everything that has happened, which really doesn't seem real just yet. And so that's how grief works, right? We go through this process of gradually accepting what is true and accepting the situation, and then ask God to help us to deal with that. So thank you again for all of you who are helping me to deal with that, and thank you for refreshing me as we go forward from here. So yeah, never be sorry for your tears. Yes. Not sorry for my tears, just want to be able to communicate in things. But you're right, sometimes we have this thing that we need to put on a facade, and especially as ministers, that we need to appear like we have everything just all together, and we don't always. And we had a good reminder of that over a few days ago. Another minister who is nationally known minister committed suicide. And so it happens. These things happen. It's kind of becoming a common, unfortunately, becoming a common thing with people involved in ministry. So I appreciate those who allow me to be myself. Thank you, James, for that permission to be myself around them and to be a real person around them. And I think it's part of what leads to longevity in ministry to the point that we can't imagine really going anywhere else, that God would call us somewhere else because we have such deep roots with people here. So again, thank you to everyone for refreshing me. We love you all. We will see you back here on Thursday. Bye.